The weight of steel. Commander Naomi Reeves stood at the helm of the UES Challenger, her fingers tracing the reinforced plasteel railing that encircled the command center. The massive research vessel, stretching nearly 3 kilometers in length, represented humanity's greatest achievement in space engineering. Its hull gleamed with an intricate network of sensor arrays, defense systems, and research instruments that made it appear more like a mobile fortress than a vessel of scientific discovery. "Commander, we're detecting unusual radiation signatures at the edge of the Tau Ceti system," Lieutenant Raj Patel's voice carried across the bridge, his dark eyes fixed on the holographic display before him. Reeves straightened her uniform, the fabric specially designed to regulate temperature in the event of life support failure. "Classification?" "That's just it, ma'am. The pattern suggests artificial origin, but it's unlike anything in our database." "The energy output alone." Patel's voice trailed off as new data streamed across his display. After 20 years of exploring empty star systems, they might have finally found what the Challenger was built to discover. Reeves activated the ship-wide comm system. "Dr. Yuki Tanaka to the bridge. Priority 1." Minutes later, the ship's lead xenophysicist arrived, her typically immaculate lab coat showing signs of hasty departure from her research. "Commander, what have we?" Her words caught as she saw the sensor readings. "Impossible. These energy patterns, they're too precise to be natural." "Take us in closer," Reeves ordered. "Standard first contact protocols. Defensive screens at minimum power, we don't want to appear hostile." The Challenger moved with surprising grace for its size, its fusion drives pulsing with carefully controlled power. As they approached the source of the radiation signatures, the ship's sensors revealed something extraordinary, a vast network of crystalline structures, each pulsing with brilliant emerald energy. "Multiple objects detected," Patel reported, his voice steady despite the excitement. They're moving, Commander. Definitely artificial constructs." On the main display, objects that could only be vessels appeared, their forms defying conventional engineering. Unlike the practical, armored design of the Challenger, these ships appeared to be grown rather than built, their crystalline structures refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. "Dr. Tanaka, analysis." Reeves kept her voice calm, though her heart raced with the significance of this moment. "The vessels appear to be utilizing some form of crystalline technology. Their hulls, they're not just protective shells, they're part of their propulsion system." "Fascinating." Tanaka's fingers flew across her tablet, recording every detail. Before Reeves could order communication attempts, the alien vessels suddenly scattered, their formation breaking apart like startled fish. Energy readings spiked across the sensor displays as the alien ships activated what appeared to be defensive systems. "What just happened?" Reeves demanded. Dr. Tanaka's face paled as she studied the readings. "Commander, look at their reaction pattern. They're not running from us, they're maintaining a specific distance. I think they're terrified of us." Understanding dawned on Reeves as she looked at her own ship through new eyes. The Challenger was built according to humanity's hard-learned lessons about space travel. Every system had redundancies, the hull was thick enough to withstand direct meteor impacts, and weapon systems covered every angle, originally designed to vaporize space debris but equally capable of offensive action. "They're broadcasting," Patel announced. "The Universal Translation Matrix is processing. It's some kind of warning signal. They're describing us as the Steel Harbinger. They think we're a weapon of war." Reeves felt a weight settle in her stomach. Humanity's first contact was going sideways because their very approach to space travel appeared threatening to a species that had evolved with a completely different philosophy of survival. "Open all frequencies," she ordered. "Prepare to transmit our first contact package, but add something special. Show them our ship's construction logs, the accidents that led to our design philosophy. Let them understand why we build the way we do." As the data streamed out, one of the crystalline vessels, slightly larger than the others, moved cautiously forward. Its surface rippled with patterns of light that the translation matrix began to decode. "They're responding," Patel reported. "Text only, why do you armor yourselves against the embrace of space itself?" Reeves stepped forward, choosing her words carefully. "We armor ourselves not out of aggression, but respect. Space is the greatest teacher humanity has ever known, and every plate of steel, every backup system, represents a lesson learned in blood. We come seeking knowledge and friendship, but we refuse to sacrifice lives to prove our peaceful intentions." There was a long pause before the aliens responded. When they did, their message carried the first hint of understanding. Perhaps we have something to learn from each other. Your respect for space's dangers has led you to create things we never imagined possible. As your mastery of crystalline technology represents advances we never dreamed of, Reeves replied. Shall we learn from each other? As the massive Challenger held position near the elegant crystalline vessel, two vastly different approaches to conquering the final frontier prepared to find common ground. Humanity's first steps into a larger galaxy had begun not with war or fear, but with mutual respect for the greatest challenge both species had ever faced, the void itself. Reeves smiled as the first technical data packages began to flow between the ships. Sometimes, she realized, the strongest bridges between civilizations were built on shared challenges rather than shared solutions. Echoes of understanding. The conference chamber aboard the UES Challenger hummed with carefully calibrated atmospheric controls, adjusted to accommodate both human and crystalline biology. The room's reinforced viewport offered a stunning view of the alien fleet, their emerald ships casting prismatic patterns across the chamber's walls. Dr. Marcus Rivera, the ship's xenobiologist, found himself mesmerized by the being seated across from him. Ambassador Zirian of the crystalline Concordat appeared almost liquid in motion, their translucent form flowing within the confines of a specialized environmental suit. Faceted sensory organs refracted light in complex patterns that the translation matrix was still learning to interpret as emotional indicators. Your vessel, Zirian began, their words converted to sound by the matrix, carries enough defensive capability to withstand a stellar flare. Yet you claim to be explorers, not warriors. Rivera nodded, activating a holographic display of the Challenger's internal systems. Consider the Icarus incident of 2184, he explained. A research vessel caught in an unexpected solar storm. Their shielding failed. 23 lives lost because we underestimated space's fury. Every system you see here represents a lesson learned through loss. The ambassador's crystalline form shifted, patterns of light rippling through their structure in what the matrix interpreted as deep contemplation. We too have lost many to the void's challenges, they admitted. But our response was to develop ways to flow with space's currents, not fortify against them. Chief Engineer Priya Patel joined the conversation, her weathered hands gesturing at the holographic display. That's what fascinates us about your ships. You've developed technology that adapts to space phenomena rather than resisting them. Your crystalline matrices actually absorb and redirect solar radiation, don't they? Indeed, Zirian's form brightened. Just as fascinating is your mastery of redundant systems. Our ships are efficient, but vulnerable to catastrophic failure. Perhaps there is wisdom in your over-engineering. The discussion continued for hours, touching on everything from propulsion technology to cultural philosophy. The humans learned that the crystalline Concordat had evolved on a world bathed in intense radiation, leading them to develop their characteristic adaptive technology. In turn, they shared humanity's history of space exploration, each disaster and triumph that had shaped their approach to the stars. There's something we'd like to show you, Rivera said finally, nodding to Priya. The engineer activated a new hologram, showing a hybrid design that merged human and crystalline technologies. We believe we could integrate your crystalline matrices into our hull design, creating a ship that's both adaptable and resilient. Zirian's form pulsed with what the matrix now confidently translated as excitement. And we have been studying your redundancy protocols. Perhaps, a joint venture? Commander Reeves, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. A collaboration between our peoples. A ship that represents the best of both our approaches to space exploration. The discussion was interrupted by an urgent communication from the bridge. Lieutenant Patel's voice carried tension. "Commander, we're detecting new signatures approaching the system. They're different from anything we've seen before." Zirian's form shifted rapidly, patterns of light racing through their structure. "The swarm," they said simply. "They have noticed our gathering." The humans exchanged glances as Reeves accessed the sensor data. Multiple objects were indeed approaching, their movement patterns suggesting a hive-like coordination. "Are they hostile?" she asked. "Unknown," Zirian replied. "The swarm has avoided contact with both our peoples. They observe, then vanish. Some believe they are ancient automated systems, others think they are truly alien minds. They have never approached so directly before." Reeves studied the tactical display, years of training kicking in. "Your ships are faster but vulnerable. The Challenger is slower but can weather almost anything. Together, Zirian finished, we might finally understand them." Their form pulsed with determination. "I propose we remain. Show these observers what cooperation between our peoples can achieve." As the swarm approached, the crystalline ships took up formation around the Challenger, their adaptive technology complementing the human vessel's robust defenses. It was an impromptu demonstration of what their peoples could accomplish together: strength and adaptability, resilience and flexibility. Rivera watched through the viewport as the first swarm vessels became visible, dark, angular shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their very presence raised countless scientific questions, but more importantly, they had inadvertently catalyzed something remarkable: the first true alliance between humans and the crystalline concordat. "Send a greeting," Reeves ordered, her voice carrying the weight of this historic moment. "Let them see that different approaches to surviving space's challenges can coexist and complement each other." As the message was transmitted, Zirian's form rippled with what could only be described as hope. "Perhaps," they mused, "this is why we never truly understood the swarm alone. Some mysteries require multiple perspectives to unravel." The assembled group watched in anticipation as the swarm drew closer, knowing that whatever happened next would shape the future of both their species. The bridge between their civilizations, built on mutual respect and shared challenges, was about to face its first test. Bridge of Stars. Through the reinforced observation dome of the UES Challenger, the swarm vessels resembled a cluster of obsidian shards against the starlit void. Their angular forms absorbed nearly all light, making them visible primarily by the stars they obscured. Commander Reeves stood alongside Ambassador Zirian as they waited for any response to their greeting. "Movement detected," Lieutenant Raj reported from his station. "The swarm vessels are realigning." The dark ships began to shift, their formation changing from a loose cluster to a precise geometric pattern. Dr. Rivera leaned forward, his scientific curiosity piqued. "It's like they're forming some kind of language," interrupted Dr. Olivia Santos, the ship's linguistics expert. Her fingers flew across her console as she analyzed the pattern. "They're communicating through spatial positioning. The gaps between their ships, they're not random." Ambassador Zirian's crystalline form pulsed with rapid light patterns. "Of course. We always assumed their movements were defensive or strategic. We never considered they might be trying to speak." The translation matrix hummed as it processed this new form of communication. Slowly, meaning began to emerge from the geometric dance of the swarm ships. "We observe. We learn. You are different," Santos translated. "They're fascinated by our cooperation. They've been watching both our species separately for centuries, trying to understand why we approach space travel so differently." Commander Reeves stepped forward. "Can we respond in their language?" "Not exactly," Santos replied. "But we might be able to demonstrate our intent through action. She glanced at Zirian. Ambassador, if your ships could work with ours. Understanding flowed through Zirian's crystalline structure. They transmitted commands to their fleet, and the crystalline vessels began to move in concert with the Challenger. Together, they formed a response pattern, combining the fluid grace of the Concordat ships with the sturdy presence of the human vessel. The swarm ships shifted again, their pattern expressing what the Matrix translated as intense interest. Then, something unprecedented occurred. One of the swarm vessels separated from the formation, approaching slowly. As it drew closer, its surface began to change, sections becoming alternately reflective like the crystalline ships and solid like the Challenger. They're mimicking both our construction methods, Chief Engineer Patel observed in awe. They're showing us they understand. The next transmission from the swarm came not in geometric patterns but in a complex combination of light and spatial positioning that made the translation matrix whir with effort. Your differences make you stronger. We have watched species fade to dust because they could not adapt. You adapt by learning from each other. They're not just observers, Rivera realized. They're guardians of some kind, studying species to see which ones might survive long-term space exploration. The swarm vessel nearest to them continued its transformation, its surface now a fascinating hybrid of multiple technological approaches. The translation matrix conveyed their next message: we offer knowledge. The void between stars holds more dangers than either of your peoples have encountered. Together, you might survive them. Commander Reeves exchanged glances with Zirian. A test, she said. They were testing whether we could overcome our differences and learn from each other. And an offer of guidance, Zirian added, their form rippling with excitement. Commander, my people have long suspected that there were ancient species watching from the shadows. The swarm must have seen countless civilizations rise and fall. The swarm's next message confirmed their suspicions: many try to conquer space. Few learn to dance with it. Fewer still learn to dance together. As if to demonstrate, the swarm vessels began a complex maneuver, their movements suggesting technologies and principles far beyond current understanding. They were offering a glimpse of what was possible when different approaches to space travel were truly unified. Commander, Zirian's voice carried an almost human tone of wonder, I believe we are being invited to learn the true art of space travel. Reeves nodded, a smile playing at her lips. Then let's show them we're ready to learn. She turned to her crew. Prepare for technological and cultural exchange protocols. Something tells me our mission of exploration is about to become more interesting than we ever imagined. The swarm's final message of the day seemed to ripple through space itself: the void is vast. Those who would survive it must be vaster still. Together, you might become something new. Something that endures. As the combined fleet of human, crystalline, and swarm vessels held position in the starlit void, the future seemed to stretch out before them like an endless sea of possibilities. The bridge between civilizations had become a gateway to something far greater than any of them had imagined. Shadows of doubt. The integration chamber aboard the UES Challenger bustled with activity as human and crystalline engineers worked to implement the swarm's first technological offering. A new form of sensor array that combined the Concordat's adaptive crystalline matrices with human redundancy systems pulsed with an otherworldly glow. Dr. Rivera monitored the integration process alongside Zirian when Lieutenant Raja's voice cut through the chamber, unknown vessels approaching at high velocity. Multiple signatures, heavily armed. Commander Reeves' voice followed immediately over the comm, all personnel to emergency stations. Dr. Rivera, secure the integration chamber. Ambassador Zirian, your expertise is needed on the bridge. As they rushed to the bridge, the situation became clear. A fleet of biomechanical ships had entered the system, their organic hulls bristling with weapon ports. The translation matrix struggled to process their initial broadcast, but the intent was clear from their aggressive approach vector. The hegemony, Zirian's form darkened with concern. A species that believes technological advancement should be controlled. They view unrestricted sharing of knowledge as dangerous. The main display showed the hegemony fleet taking up attack positions. Their ships resembled massive predatory creatures, all sharp angles and threatening protrusions. A transmission cut through all frequencies. This gathering is unauthorized. The exchange of restricted technologies will not be permitted. Disperse immediately or face consequences. Commander Reeves stood firm at her station. This is Commander Reeves of the UES Challenger. We're engaged in peaceful scientific exchange. By what authority do you claim to restrict it? By the authority of survival, came the reply. Unrestricted technological exchange has led to the collapse of countless civilizations. We are the guardians of controlled progress. Chief Engineer Patel's voice carried poorly concealed outrage. They're trying to play gatekeeper to the galaxy's knowledge. The swarm vessels, which had maintained their distance during the exchange, suddenly began to move. Their formation shifted into what the humans now recognized as a complex statement: the hegemony fears what they cannot control. They hoard knowledge like weapons. Ambassador, Reeves turned to Zirian, have they interfered with your people before? They have, discouraged certain avenues of research, Zirian admitted, their crystalline form showing patterns of frustration. We believed it easier to comply than risk conflict. The hegemony ships moved closer, their organic hulls pulsing with barely contained energy. This is your final warning. The human vessel will surrender its database of technological exchanges. The crystalline concordat will return to their approved research parameters. The swarm. There was a pause. The swarm will be contained. Rivera watched as Commander Reeves exchanged glances with Zirian and then looked at the geometric message from the swarm. In that moment, something remarkable happened. All three species seemed to reach the same conclusion simultaneously. No, Reeves replied simply. The Challenger's defensive systems powered up, its redundant shields forming layers of protection. The crystalline vessels flowed into an adaptive formation around it, their technology already incorporating some of the human defensive principles. The swarm ships moved with precise purpose, their dark forms creating patterns that somehow strengthened both human and crystalline defenses. Knowledge belongs to those who seek to learn, Reeves continued. Not those who seek to control. We refuse to let fear of progress dictate our future. The hegemony commander's voice carried a note of surprise. You would risk conflict to defend this principle? We would risk conflict to defend the right to grow, to learn, to evolve. Zirian's response came clear and strong. Your philosophy of controlled progress is itself a form of stagnation. The swarm's geometric message was translated simply: evolution cannot be contained. Those who try become fossils. As the tension mounted, Dr. Rivera noticed something extraordinary on his sensors. The hybrid technology they'd been developing was responding to the situation, adapting in ways none of them had predicted. The crystalline matrices were integrating with human systems at an unprecedented rate, creating defensive capabilities that seemed to draw inspiration from the swarm's ancient knowledge. Commander, he called out, the integration chamber. I think we're seeing exactly why the hegemony fears unrestricted exchange. When different technologies are allowed to interact naturally, they evolve into something greater than the sum of their parts. The hegemony fleet held position, seemingly uncertain how to proceed against this unified front of three vastly different species, each contributing their unique strengths to a common defense. What had begun as a simple technological exchange had become something far more significant. A stand for the fundamental right of species to learn from each other, to grow together, and to face the challenges of space as a united force rather than isolated civilizations. Beyond the horizon. The standoff in the Tau Ceti system had drawn the attention of spacecraft from across the nearby sectors. The hegemony fleet remained in attack position, but something had changed in their stance. Their organic ships seemed less aggressive, more contemplative, as if the unified defense before them had given them pause. Commander Reeves studied the tactical display where three distinct technologies, human, crystalline, and swarm, worked in perfect harmony. The Challenger's reinforced hull now gleamed with adaptive crystalline matrices, while the Concordat's ships had incorporated human-style redundancy systems. The swarm's ancient knowledge had enhanced both, creating something entirely new. Incoming transmission, Lieutenant Raj announced. From the Hegemony flagship. A new voice filled the bridge, different from the previous Hegemony commander. I am Elder Coordinator Thaxon. I request, dialogue. Reeves exchanged glances with Zirian before responding. We're willing to talk. The communication revealed that the Hegemony's ruling council was divided. Some, like Thaxon, had begun to question their role as technological gatekeepers. The display of cooperation they'd witnessed, three radically different species working together, their technologies blending naturally rather than catastrophically, challenged their fundamental beliefs about controlled progress. Dr. Rivera's voice carried excitement as he reported from the integration chamber, Commander, the hybrid systems are achieving stability levels we thought impossible. The crystalline matrices aren't just adapting to our technology, they're improving it. And the swarm's principles, they're like missing puzzle pieces we never knew we needed. The Hegemony ships gradually powered down their weapons. Elder Thaxon's next words carried the weight of centuries. Perhaps we have been preserving stagnation rather than preventing disaster. The swarm vessels moved into a new pattern, one that the translation matrix interpreted with crystal clarity. Knowledge is not a weapon to be contained. It is a garden to be tended. Growth cannot be controlled, only guided. Commander Reeves stepped forward. Then let us show you what can grow from cooperation. She nodded to Chief Engineer Patel, who activated a holographic display of their hybrid technology's capabilities. The demonstration was compelling. The combined technologies didn't just complement each other, they sparked innovations that none of the species had conceived alone. The Hegemony observers watched as systems they had deemed too dangerous to mix worked together flawlessly, protected by human redundancies, enhanced by crystalline adaptation, and guided by swarm wisdom. We propose a new approach, Reeves offered. Instead of restricting knowledge, help us create a framework for sharing it responsibly. Your experience in understanding the risks of technological exchange could be invaluable. Elder Thaxon's response came after a long pause. You suggest we become teachers rather than guardians? Guides, Zirian corrected, their crystalline form pulsing with optimism. Sharing your wisdom about the pitfalls of technological integration while allowing natural growth and cooperation. As if to emphasize the point, the swarm ships began a complex dance through space, their movements describing possibilities that made even the Hegemony's advanced sensors struggle to comprehend. They were showing glimpses of what awaited species willing to learn and grow together. Over the next several hours, the framework of a new galactic accord took shape. The Hegemony would transform from restrictive guardians to experienced advisors. The crystalline Concordat would share their adaptive technology. Humanity would contribute their expertise in systematic safety and redundancy. And the swarm, they would continue to watch, guide, and share the accumulated wisdom of eons. Commander Reeves stood at her familiar position on the bridge, watching as ships of four distinctly different species began the first tentative steps of technological and cultural exchange. The UES Challenger, now partially crystalline and incorporating traces of swarm technology, represented more than just human ingenuity, it had become a symbol of what diverse species could achieve together. The void between stars holds many challenges, Zirian observed, their form reflecting the starlight. But perhaps the greatest challenge was learning to face them together. As the combined fleet prepared for the next phase of their journey, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging this moment. Humanity's first steps into the galactic community had led not just to scientific advancement, but to a fundamental shift in how species viewed their place in the cosmos. The future stretched out before them, vast and unknown, but they would face it not as separate civilizations, but as partners in the greatest exploration humanity had ever known. The weight of steel had given way to the strength of unity, and the galaxy would never be the same. For centuries, humanity had mastered the art of invisibility. Not through technology, but through carefully crafted insignificance. Commander Diana Reeves stood at the observation deck of the Terran Defense Station Helios, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the latest movements of the Nexus Collective's fleet. The collective had emerged from the depths of the Ophiuchus Arm, a confederation of species united by their belief in technological supremacy. They saw themselves as the pinnacle of evolution, destined to guide, or subjugate, what they deemed lesser civilizations. Their ships, sleek crystalline structures that seemed to bend light itself, had already conquered 17 systems in the past solar year. Another system lost, reported Lieutenant James Okoro, his fingers dancing across the neural interface. The Centauri Alliance didn't stand a chance. Their entire defense fleet, gone in minutes. Diana nodded, her expression unchanged. The Centauri had been proud warriors, but they had failed to understand what humanity had learned through bitter experience. Sometimes, the greatest power lies in being underestimated. 200 years ago, humanity had encountered its first alien civilization, the Meridian Empire. The contact had nearly ended in extinction. Humanity survived not through military might, but by appearing so technologically primitive that the Meridians deemed them unworthy of conquest. That lesson had shaped Earth's entire interstellar policy. Status of Project Prometheus? Diana asked, turning to Dr. Raven Singh, the chief scientist of Earth's Hidden Defense Initiative. Raven's dark eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction. The quantum mesh is complete. Every ship in the collective's fleet is already surrounded by our nanoscale observers. They see empty space, while we see everything. This was humanity's true strength. While other species built bigger ships and more powerful weapons, Earth had focused on the invisible. Quantum-scale technologies that could hide in plain sight, artificial intelligence that could predict enemy movements weeks in advance, and weapons that could shut down entire fleets without firing a single shot. The collective's latest propaganda broadcast is interesting, Lieutenant Okoro noted, bringing up a holographic display. They're calling themselves the Guardians of Progress. Claiming their conquests are necessary for the greater good of the galaxy. Diana studied the broadcast, watching the collective's supreme director, a tall, crystalline being named Vextor, promise peace through submission. His words were smooth, reasonable even, but they carried the same underlying threat: adapt or be destroyed. They're getting closer, Raven observed. Their current trajectory will bring them to Sol System within 3 months. Diana straightened her uniform, a simple black design that bore no rank insignia, another piece of humanity's careful misdirection. Then it's time. Initiate Protocol Omega. The command sent ripples of activity through the station. For 2 centuries, humanity had prepared for this moment. Every defeat, every humiliation, every moment of forced submission had been leading to this. Sending the warning now, Lieutenant Okoro confirmed. Across the vast expanse of space, a message traveled to the Nexus Collective's command ship. It was polite, almost apologetic in its tone, to the esteemed leaders of the Nexus Collective. We, the representatives of Earth, respectfully request that you alter your expansion course. Further advancement toward Sol System will necessitate a response. This is our only communication on this matter. The response came quickly, filled with the arrogance humanity had counted on. Supreme Director Vextor himself replied, "Your primitive species dares to make demands. Your system will be enlightened by the collective's guidance, whether you wish it or not." Diana allowed herself a small smile. Everything was proceeding exactly as predicted. The collective, like so many before them, saw only what they expected to see, a primitive species making futile gestures of defiance. They didn't see the quantum mesh already woven through their ship systems. They didn't notice the microscopic machines that had been cataloging their weaknesses for months. They couldn't detect the neural networks that had mapped out every possible scenario of their response. "Begin Phase 2, Diana ordered. "Let's show them what humanity has learned from centuries of watching." As the order went out, humanity's hidden strength began to stir. In the shadows between stars, in the quantum realm where light itself held no meaning, Earth's true power waited to be unleashed. The Nexus Collective was about to learn why humanity's polite warnings were the most dangerous in the galaxy. Those who had watched their fall would remember it as the moment when silence became strength, and politeness became the prelude to power.